Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so this video is supposed to be talking about the Tempest, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. It's actually going to focus specifically on Act 1, Scene 2, and you'll have a lot of detail, which inshallah I'm going to try and unpack. I would be picking out a lot of the quotes, trying to pick out what I think is the most significant ones. The other thing that I will be doing is identifying the themes that might be connected to some of these quotes. I think that's really the crux of it. So if I try and get the presentation shared, I've called it Act 1, Scene 2, The Tempest, Details. And really, this is supposed to be a series of different scenes that I will attempt to try and showcase. Let's get on with it. So the first thing you can see is if I move on to the next slide. Act 1, Scene 2A. What I've done is I've broken Act 1, Scene 2 into a series of segments. So there's A, B, C, and D. So let's start with Act 1, Scene 2A. This is where Prospero tells us about his life story. Okay. So let me just minimize this. Here. Okay. So you have Miranda. She says, "If by your art, my dearest father, you have put these wild waters in this raw, allay them." Meaning, if father, you have created the tempest, stop it, please. If you recall, Act 1, Scene 1, which is a very short scene, shows the actual shipwreck. Okay. We realize by Act 1, Scene 2 that Prospero and Miranda are watching on. And when she witnesses this shipwreck, she mentions, "Oh, I have suffered with those I saw suffer." Prospero, he reassures her, saying, "There is no harm done. I have done nothing but in care of thee, my dear one." And there's repetition there. And so if I were to quickly identify certain themes that you could talk about, you would have love. This one, clearly, my dearest father, shows that there is love there. You also, if by your art is a reference to his magic. If by your magic, my dear father, you have created this tempest. So you could use this to as a quote to introduce the idea that the tempest itself, the whole of Act 1, Scene 1, was orchestrated by Prospero. About his magic, he emphasizes that actually there's no harm done. He didn't harm anybody. This will need a little bit of elaboration because she's just seen a shipwreck. So I don't understand, how is there no harm done? And he emphasizes that I've only done things for you, my dear one, and this emphasizes love. Okay, let's move on. So Prospero then says that he's master of a full port cell, meaning he's referring to the cave. That he apparently seems to be just a master of a cave, and what he's saying is he's kind of looking into how Miranda might think about him. And Miranda, for all these years while they were on this island, may consider Prospero to merely be in charge of a cave, and that's about it. So this is said slightly ironically there. And when he mentions how much damage has been done to those on that ship, he says not so much perdition as an hair, meaning not even a hair has been harmed on the heads of the people on that boat. So some people feel that Prospero is very tyrannical if he was tyrannical, then how is it that he has not harmed anyone on the boat, not even um, damaging one hair? So this would be a quote that you could use to defend Prospero. Then he says, and he reveals that he is actually, thy father was the Duke of Milan, Prince of Power, and later he also says the Prime Duke. And this emphasizes his power. He feels that he feels the need to affirm who he is. Okay, and you also have the idea that yet he has a type of humility. You could argue it's questionable, but I'll leave it there for you. Power. What about not so much perdition as in hair? This emphasizes the idea that why is it that he has not harmed anybody? Is he not trying to exact revenge? So you could link this to the revenge theme and say, well, actually, he's been quite merciful. Or could it be that he's planning something? So either way, that could be something to say there. Another one is he uses his magic. He emphasizes that he's used his magic, even though there was a shipwreck, he did not harm anyone. And that was through his magic, okay? Prospero also says, foul play, blessedly hold hither. That's a reference to about fate, and he's come here that there was some deception that occurred, and as a reference to Antonio's usurpation, meaning kind of sly attempt to take over and take control. But he does also suggest that so that was a negative, but there's a positive, which is he does also at the same time say that we were blessedly brought here. Okay, so it says foul and blessed at the same time. So there's a type of contrast there. Now, when he starts moving into his backstory, he says about Antonio, of all the world I loved. He loved his brother. He mentions how, in terms of the liberal arts, that means study and education, he was without a parallel. He was at the top. But he becomes wrapped in secret studies. And this is the only real reference you get to him dabbling in magic in his studies. He does ask Miranda, dost thou attend me? Are you listening? He's asking, and this suggests a type of controlling nature. He needs to be heard. Miranda replies, most heedfully, oh, good sir, I do. I'm listening. So she comes across as dutiful. Your tale, sir, would cure deafness. There's two possibilities here. One is, Father, your story is very, very long. But this is kind of implied. Really what she's suggesting is I must listen. If I was deaf, I would have to listen, and that would be taking it very politely. But there's a kind of humor embedded in this. So if we quickly look at the different themes, foul play, you have conspiracy. Yet blessedly we were brought here. This is a reference to fate. Of all the world I loved, that's against the love theme. Power, I was without any parallel. Emphasizes power. You got magic with wrapped in secret studies. Are you listening to me? Is to do with the control theme. You'll notice power and control, I kind of colored them the same color of this movie purple because they'll be the same quotes really. Love again. I'm listening, Father, and then there's humor. Okay. Moving on. New created the creatures that were mine. So this is what Antonio was doing, according to Prospero, that he was creating new people. He was taking over Prospero's people, replacing them with people loyal to Antonio. He was the ivy which hid my princely trunk and sucked my verdure out. So there's a metaphor here embedded that whereas Prospero is the princely trunk of the tree, it's being hidden and covered over by the ivy, which represents Antonio, his brother, who sucked out all of the life force out of Prospero. By neglecting worldly ends. So Prospero, having given the government to his brother, which he's going to explain in a minute, he decides he wants to focus on bettering his mind. But this, in my false brother, awaked an evil nature. So suddenly, brother became ambitious. He did believe he was the Duke. So Antonio believed he was actually the Duke of Milan. He needs will be absolute Milan. Antonio needed, must be in Antonio's mind, Milan, the Duke of Milan, absolutely. For Prospero, however, this emphasizes that actually he wasn't ambitious. He was a very simple man. My library was duped him enough. He was happy with his books. And yet this was his downfall, because remember, by books, he's referring to the wrapped in secret studies. So it was his obsession with the magic that brought about his demise. So using the technical terms of hubris, or sorry, not hubris, hamartia, which is the ancient Greek word for dramatic flaw, this would emphasize that this is something that was a weakness in Prospero that brought him down. Okay, much more can be said, but I will leave it there. So you have usurpation, the beginning, how Antonio tried to take over. You have loads of quotes there to do with power, magic, because he was bettering his mind by neglecting worldly ends. He's focusing more on his magic. And he's also a perfectionist. My library was duped him enough. Okay. The King of Naples being an enemy to me inveterate. So you're now moving on to Alonso, emphasizing the backstory that he was an enemy, and how Antonio had to pay homage and also pay a tribute. So this is Antonio almost bowing to Naples. Why? In order to extirpate me and mine, in order to get rid of Prospero and Miranda. And when asked, why did they not that hour destroy Prospero, when Miranda asked, why did they not kill us? Prospero explains, they durst not, so dear the love my people bore me. Instead, with colors fairer, they painted their fouler ends. So they tried to cover over their evil deeds and make it look good. And they put them onto a bark, which is a boat, more of a fancy boat. And then once they were a distance away, they then told them to get off and get onto a rotten carcass of a butt, which is like a raft. And they Prospero emphasizes how even the rats didn't want to be on this thing. And they hoist us to cry to the sea, and they just threw them on this raft to the sea, invariably to be killed. And when Miranda complains, oh no, I must have been a difficult burden for you, Prospero says, oh, a cherubim, that's an angel, thou wast, that did preserve me. No, you actually preserved me, rather than being something that brought me down. You gave me hope, because I had to live on to try and see you through. Okay, so what do we have here? We have power. He's emphasizing the King of Naples is an enemy, and this idea of Antonio losing power, giving power more to Naples, and then, but then at the same time, Antonio to have more power over Prospero, to get rid of him and his daughter. You have the idea of appearance and reality, meaning what seems to be the case and what actually is the case. This is talking about the fact that Antonio had to hide his real intention. And then you have the violence theme, which is to say that, you know, they put him onto a boat, but really the intention was to kill Prospero and his child. And you have the love part at the end, where Prospero confirms that he loves his daughter. Okay, how did we survive? And the answer was by providence divine. How do we get to this island? So this is kind of good luck, or by the will of God, depending on your perspective. Obviously, the Shakespearean people, or the Elizabethan or Jacobean people of the time, would have been Christian, so they would have seen the divine hand. They would understand it in this way. But there was a noble Neapolitan, meaning somebody from Naples, who out of his charity, who was appointed master of this design, out of his charity, he furnished me with volumes that I prized above my dukedom. So this is a reference to Gonzalo, who was supposed to be the minister charged with killing Prospero and Miranda, but he, out of his charity, he kind of felt bad because he's actually a good man. And so secretly, he furnished him with books because he knows Prospero loved his books. It must have included the magic books, and that's how they were saved. And when they got to the island, Prospero says that I was thy schoolmaster, talking to Miranda. I was the one teaching you. So this whole incident was as an accident most strange, how they managed to get onto the island. Again, he links it to fortune, bountiful fortune, who is basically fate, who is being personified. And he says, so the accident most strange is how fate has brought his enemies to the shore. Because she asks, why have you created the tempest in the first place? And he says, well, they've brought these enemies to the shore. And so what is coming on here? You've got the idea of the revenge and the planning. Accident most strange, yeah, and bountiful fortune. They brought my enemies here. It shows how Prospero is thinking, has been pondering about this, and the time has come to enact his plans. We don't know at this stage what his plan is. We also have redemption, how Gonzalo is trying to help, and this also explains why he's very lenient to Gonzalo. Magic is again mentioned here, and learning there. Fate and control is another one. Fate and control, right at the bottom. Okay, so how did he know about all this? Well, it's through his prescience, his foreknowledge, or his magic. It's a reference to his magic. And if now I court not, but omit, my fortunes will ever after droop. If I don't do anything now, I will. The chance to do anything will be lost. He says to Miranda to stop asking more questions, and says, "You are now inclined to sleep. This is a good dullness. Give into it. Give into it. I know you cannot choose. I know thou canst not choose." And Miranda sleeps. So here we have the emphasis on the magic again. It's foreknowledge, but also the fact that he magics or enchants Miranda to go to sleep, and she sleeps. We also have the revenge and the planning, meaning if I don't do something now, then my fortunes will droop or drop. So I have to act on it right now. Fate also will yeah, because it's the same thing. I need to do it now. And it says my fortune, that's connected to fate. And then you got the idea of control. No more questions. So he comes across very controlling. I know you can't choose. You don't have any choice in the matter. I'm putting you to sleep. So she goes to sleep. That's why I've grayed her out. And now we move to Act 1, Scene 2, B. B is with the introduction, with the sleeping of Miranda and the introduction of Ariel. So here we have Ariel's task, Sycorax and the willing slave. Prospero says, have you, spirit, or hast thou, spirit, performed the point Tempest that I bade you? Have you done the Tempest? Meaning Act 1, Scene 1. And Ariel says, "Oh, hail, great master, I come to answer thy best pleasure. Yes, I did everything. To every article, I flamed amazement," is another thing he says. To every article means I did everything you told me to. To every thing on the list. Not a hair perished. And in terms of their garments, it's actually fresher than before. And about Ferdinand, he says, yeah, I left him with his arms in this sad knot. He separates Ferdinand from the rest of the people who seemingly drowned, and he put him on the island. Okay, and it just comments that he was in a sad state, just sitting down, forlorn. So we have the control theme, Prospero controlling Ariel. Have you done what I told you to do? And Ariel responds, yeah, everything. But also we have the theme about freedom, being free, and being a slave. All hail, great master. It seems like he's the willing slave. Yeah, I did everything you wanted me to do. Ariel here is also showing power. I flamed amazement. That's a good quote, easy one to remember about his power. And he's also emphasizing that Ariel has magic. And we realize at this point that Prospero does have magic, but his magic is to control the spirits, and he gets them to do the magic. So in this case, Ariel, who has the magic, is being controlled, but Ariel emphasizes that he used his own will to ensure that not a hair perished. But then you could argue that was Prospero's instruction. Then he says, I made even their clothes better than before. And the rest of the fleet, well, they are bound sadly home for Naples, and they suppose that they saw the king's ship wrecked. Prospero says, my brave spirits, he gives him a compliment. Your charge or thy charge is exactly performed, but there's more work. I need you to do more. And so Ariel kind of feels really upset here. He goes, is there more toil? Like, more work? So, and then Prospero says, how now, moody? Like, why are you being so frustrated for? So we have the idea of slave and being free, or the question of freedom. Is there more toil? And he says, my brave spirit, gives him a compliment. You've done everything that you needed to do. We also have the idea of revenge and planning, but there's more work. There's a hint that Prospero still has more things to do. And also the control, like, what's your problem? But then it could be also humor. Audiences often laugh at this point. Ariel says, since you give me so much pains, can I remind you, let me remember thee, what thou hast promised, what you promised, but you have not yet performed me. My liberty. That's an important quote. That has to be in any essay. Try to chuck it in wherever you can. I have done thee worthy service, told thee no lies, made no mistaking, served without grudge or grumbling. So he's trying to emphasize all the good things he's done. And thou did promise to bait me a full year. Like, you promised that you will free me after 1 year. So this shows that slave relationship, and also this question of freedom, the theme of freedom. But we also get the idea of control and tyranny. This is a comment on Prospero. Since thou dost give me pains, since you've given me pains, emphasizing that actually Ariel even thinks that Prospero has tyrannical tendencies. Prospero responds, did you forget from what torment I did free thee? You malignant thing, dull thing. So curses Ariel. I must once in a month recount what thou hast been, which thou forgetst. Meaning, I have to keep reminding you what you were. And then it tells him about the foul, and then later the damned witch Sycorax, who has mischiefs manifold, and how she was banished. So it's a reference to Caliban's mother, who was a witch. And he confirms that this is something that thou reports thyself. This was something from you, and you said that you was her servant. This shows us that the slave theme, how and also how Prospero freed. You see the freedom theme. Actually, Prospero freed Ariel, and then he kind of you could argue emotionally blackmails Ariel to say that, look, I have to keep reminding you, and you keep forgetting about this. And this slavery is emphasized, where Ariel says that, or rather Prospero mentions that Ariel had said he was her servant. So the servant there is slave. And then, but then this also emphasizes Prospero's power, or the power of Sycorax, you could argue, either. So the power of Sycorax, because Sycorax had entrapped Ariel, but also the power of Prospero, because Prospero frees Ariel. And here, on the flip side of the previous slide, here Prospero is emphasizing his benevolence. The torment I freed you from. And yet there's control, you malignant thing, and there's kind of terms of abuse. And the magic of Sycorax, who has manifold, means many. So many mischiefs, many kind of evil, sorcerous things that Sycorax has been up to. And this emphasizes the tyranny of Sycorax. But you was a spirit too delicate to act her abhorred commands, that you weren't able to do what she told you to do, and you refused her grand hests. She did confine thee in her unmitigable rage into a cloven pine. So she actually punished Ariel and put him into a pine tree, right, within a pine tree where he was confined. And Caliban is introduced. They reference him, and he is described as a freckled whelp, hag-born, not honored with a human shape, who she did litter here. But it was mine art, meaning my magic, that made the tree open, gate the pine, and let thee out. And if you more murmur, if you argue any more, complain any more, I will rend an oak and peg thee in it, meaning in its knotty entrails, till you've howled away 12 winters. So I'll kind of do what Sycorax did, but I'll do it in a harsher tree, in an oak tree, not a pine tree, for another 12 years. So what's happening here? We have control. Yeah, this is Sycorax trying to control, and he's refusing. Okay, so Ariel did not like to be controlled, but why? Because of her abhorred commands, her evil commands, her hated commands. And this shows us that he's trying to contrast himself to Sycorax, saying she's trying to do evil magic and getting you to do evil things. These aren't the things that I'm getting you to do. And the slave theme is here, whereby he is confined and punished into the tree. And the freedom is also emphasized when he says, I let thee out. But the violence, in terms of violence theme, is in her unmitigable rage, she confined thee. Pride is indicated here. This is prosperous pride. The way he discusses or describes Caliban is from a position of arrogance. He really looks down on Caliban. He says he's not honored with a human shape. And the fact that she just littered here as if he's rubbish. And it was my art, this is emphasizing his magic, that made allowed Ariel to escape. And if you complain anymore, I will punish you. And this is emphasizing the violence yet again. And this quote here, I will rend and open peg thee. That's probably all you need. So what happens next? Ariel changes his tone completely. I thank thee, master. Pardon, master, he says. Now, this shows us that he's the willing slave. And he's contrasted to Caliban, who's coming next. Prospero says, do so, and after 2 days I'll discharge thee. He says, that's my noble master. What shall I do? Say what shall I do? He says, be invisible to every eyeball else. So it gives him a task. So you have the slave theme, right? Revenge. Be invisible. Why be invisible? Because Prospero's up to something. Also the control. So he's telling him, he's giving him the commands. And Ariel is the thankful slave. I thank thee, master. Noble, all these positive adjectives. And Ariel leaves. So that's really the end of Akron scene 2B. And now we have Akron scene 2C when Caliban comes along. He wakes up Miranda. Miranda, wake up. So her grayed out. She comes back again. And he says, Caliban, my slave, you never yields us a kind answer. He's telling her that's where they need to go. Miranda says, 'tis a villain, sir, I do not love to look on. I don't really like this guy. He's a villain. Look at the words she uses. He does make our fire, fetch in our wood, and serves in offices that profit us. So we've got to see him. And when he approaches Caliban, he says, come forth, I say, you earth, thou speak. And then he says, tortoise. So these are different phrases. All of them show a kind of commanding tone and also very disparaging, cursing words, you piece of dirt, when he says, thou earth. You've got love, awake dear heart. Now, slave, the slave here now is Caliban. My slave, he says. Okay. He emphasizes how Caliban never gives a kind answer. But look at the tasks that he gets Caliban to do. He fetches wood, he makes the fire, and other things that profit us. So we are exploiting him. That's important. That quote there, that profit us. So they are blatantly saying that we're just using him. And control, come forth. Also pride, because he's calling him earth, etc. And hate, Miranda hates him. I don't want to even look at it. Prospero then says, you poisonous slave got by the devil himself. Caliban comes forth. He's angry. Wicked dew from unwholesome fen drop on both of you. And later on he says, blister you all over. So he's kind of, first thing he does is curses. Now, for this, tonight you're going to have cramps, side stitches, pinches. That's really the only quote you need to show Prospero is going to punish. And then Caliban says, this honor is mine by Sycorax, my mother, and you took it from me. When you first came here, you stroked me and made much of me. You actually used to be nice when you first came. This shows us the slavery, how much Caliban has become enslaved. You also got the pride idea and the violence, because how much Prospero is going to punish him for his insolence. Hate, Caliban hates them because he just curses them. But also, the point I've put here for magic is not that Caliban has magic, but he's trying to magic them away, but he has no magic. So this is interesting. The way he curses them, it's as if he's doing a spell on them, but he has no magic. Colonization. This island is mine by Sycorax, my mother, and you took it from me. And also love. Actually, when you came, you were nice to me. So that's interesting. You got love and hate from Caliban, but love from the past, hate present. Caliban then, he says, teach me how, you taught me how to name the bigger light, meaning the sun. And this shows teaching. I love thee and showed thee all the qualities of the isle. So I tried to show you the best parts of the island. Again, he's cursing and trying to do a spell on them. All the charms of Sycorax lie on you. But I'm all the subjects that you have. But here you stye me in this hard rock. You place me, imprison me like a pigsty in this place, and I'm restricted, and you keep from me the rest of the island. This shows the learning that they actually put effort to try and teach him. It shows how he loved them by showing the best places of the island. And that, in a way, it shows that he was the willing slave originally, just like Ariel is. But then he goes back to the hate. And in terms of the slavery, it emphasizes how he's stuck in this sty. You could just take the word sty and keep from me the rest of the island. Again, that attempt to do magic. And the colonization theme is I am all the subjects that you have, but also the power theme. That apparently you're so powerful, but you've only just got me. So he's being sarcastic in his tone. And then control, trying to keep him from the rest of the island. Prospero says, thou most lying slave, you filth as you are. I've used you with human care and lodged you in my own cell until you tried to violate the honor of my child, reference to Caliban trying to attack Miranda. And Caliban says, ha ha ha, he laughs. If only I had done it, I would have had people this island with little mini Calibans. Okay, spelling mistake there. Okay, so hate theme, love theme, because what Prospero is saying is, well, you're lying, because I actually cared for you, but you were the one who were the aggressor. So this switches things around a bit. So actually, you're the ungrateful slave, right? I'm doing you a favor by not killing you, you could argue. And the fact that Caliban just laughs it off, you can make the case that is Prospero justified. This also emphasizes Prospero's statement here. This is quite an important one. He was actually benevolent. You can argue, and just bearing in mind how Caliban responds. Miranda can't handle it. A poor slave called him savage, called him vile race. Any print of goodness will not take being capable or ill, meaning you are not capable of being good. You're just completely evil. And I pitied you, and I took pains, I made effort to try to make you speak our language. I taught thee, but you would gabble like a thing most brutish. You couldn't even do it. Because you have in yourself something that a good nature cannot stand to be inside. So meaning goodness cannot go inside you because you're inherently nasty. And so therefore you're deservedly confined to be in this rock. It's perfect justice because you deserve more than just a prison. So this shows you the hate, but also this question of nature and nurture, meaning is Caliban inherently evil? So that's an important question. You are inherently evil. From Miranda's point of view, that's her conclusion. The point about learning, where Miranda taught him the language. But there's a question here about freedom, because you could counter argue that why does he want to learn their language? You know, he was forced to, in a way, obliged to learn their language. But it depends if you want to go that way. Pride, look at the way she cusses him or curses him, gabble like a thing most brutish. And the justice that you deserve to be imprisoned. Caliban says, yeah, you taught me your language, and my profit on it is I know how to curse. And the Red Plague rid you for learning me your language. Prospero says, hag seed hence, and he calls him malice and slave. Go and fetch our fuel and hurry up, be quick. And if you neglect or do unwillingly what I command, I'm going to rack you with old cramps. If you don't listen to what I'm telling you to do, if you don't go now and get the stuff, and again, it goes back to punishment. So you have the learning theme again. You taught me your language, but then he curses the fact that they taught him the language. You've got hate, clearly, on both sides, Caliban and Prospero. This question about being a slave, look, Prospero's telling him what to do. Short sentences, hurry up, be quick, get our fuel. And control. If you don't do what I command, I'm going to punish you. And there's the violence right there. Caliban finally says, as an aside, I must obey. His art is of such power, it will control my mother's god, Setebos. Damn his mother. So this is just control and power. It emphasizes that he is powerless. I must obey. Finally, we get to Act 1, Scene 2D. This is the last section of the Act 1, Scene 2. It's a very long play. And here, this we've called Love at First Sight. We begin with Ariel. And Ariel is invisible and he's playing and singing, because when he does that, it's a sign of enchantment and magic. He's bringing Ferdinand. And he says, full fathom 5, thy father lies, of his bones a coral made, putting an impression of his father, reminding Ferdinand's father, Alonso, who, if you recall, has apparently drowned in the ship. And Ferdinand is sad. That's why Ariel mentioned when he saw Ferdinand sit on the island, when he got himself out of the water, he put his arms in a sad knot. Well, he's grieving. So here is Ferdinand, who's following the music. Where should this music be? This is the music, the enchantment made by Ariel and the spirits. Is it in the air or in the earth? Sounds no more. And sure, it waits upon some god of the island. He thinks that the island itself has some kind of magic. And he then comments about the idea of his memory on his father. And he says he's weeping again, the king, my father's rack, meaning shipwreck. He's thinking about his father's death. So here we have references to the magic. We also have violence, the idea of why is Ariel putting that into his head is to try to get, you could argue it's a type of harassment. So you could link it to violence. We also have the idea of the island, the comment on the island itself, description of the island. And then we have love and grief, because here we see that Ferdinand is upset about losing his father and is now connected to grief. Now, he then asks Miranda, who do you see, or what do you see? And Miranda says, is it a spirit? Prospero says, no, it's a gallant, which is like a noble man. He could be called a goodly person. And then he comments that he is something stained with grief. And then Miranda says, oh, he carries a brave form, meaning he looks very courageous, handsome. And then she uses lots of exaggeration, hyperbole, a thing divine, so noble. And then Prospero says, "Oh, it goes on. I see as my soul prompts it." He says this sort of secretly. That is to say, this seems to be part of his plan, which I'll elaborate on in a minute. So we have the love theme, love and grief again. He's stained with grief. Magic. The question of, is this a spirit? This emphasizes that Miranda is aware that there are spirits that Prospero controls. And yet, this is interesting. Why have I put gallant and goodly person under control? Because it's putting into her mind that this person's a good person initially, but you'll see in a second how he switches this. And so the question is, does Prospero actually think Ferdinand is a good person at this stage? And when he says it goes on, I see as my soul prompts it, clearly he's setting them up for this encounter, for them to get married. Okay, so that's the plan. And there we go, the planning. When they see each other, when he sees Miranda, he calls her goddess. Oh, you wonder, are you married or not? If you be maid or no. She says, no wonder, I'm just normal, sir, but I am unmarried, certainly a maid. He then says, I am the best of them that speak this speech, because he believes because his father's died, he's now the king of Naples. And if you are the king of the place, you're supposed to be the best that speaks that language of that place. In this case, we're talking about their language. And so here we have the love theme clearly. And power is emphasized here. And Prospero now comes in, and this is part of his plan. He says, how are you the best? What would happen if the king of Naples heard you? Ferdinand has to explain, I am Naples, myself am Naples, who with mine eyes never since at ebb, meaning I've not stopped crying. And his reference to his father dying. Miranda feels sorry for him, a lack for mercy. And aside, Prospero says, the Duke of Milan and his more braver daughter could control thee. It's a very strange thing to say, but he's suggesting he does not like Ferdinand boasting, although you could argue he's not boasting, he's just making a statement. But Prospero, bearing in mind, remember, Prospero has been thought to be killed, but has effectively been banished for about 12 years or so on this island. So you could argue it's justifiable for him to have a kind of a negative regard for Ferdinand simply because he's the son of the guy who did this to Prospero. So that's why you could defend him and say, you know, when he says the Duke of Milan, meaning myself, and his more braver daughter, we can control you right now. But I'll leave that with you. So we have power. Yeah. Are you sure you're the king? And then we also have control. Clearly, when he says, I could control you. And we also have Miranda's love. Okay. And we also have grief, because he's crying over his father. What else do we have? Aside, they have changed eyes. They are both in either's powers. Miranda says, why speaks my father so ungently? This is the third man that ever I saw, and the first that ever I sighed for. Pity moved my father to be inclined my way. Ferdinand says, I will make you the queen of Naples. And Prospero says, I must uneasy make less too light winning, make the prize light. I must make this encounter harder. Otherwise, the prize, which presumably is Miranda for Ferdinand, will be too easy winning. He has to make it more of a challenge. So you have the love theme here. I'll make a queen of Naples. They have changed eyes, or they are both in either's powers. You could take one or the other there. Also love, because she loves Ferdinand, as I say, love at first sight. Why is my father speaking so ungently? The first that ever I sighed for, the sigh of love, and she wishes her father could have pity. But this part here, must uneasy make, emphasizes the planning and the test. When he says, "I will make you Queen of Naples," this is Ferdinand trying to show some kind of power. Prospero now comes in and says, "Thou dost here usurp the name thou owest not. You don't deserve this name, and you put yourself on this island as a spy to win it from me." Miranda says, "No, no, there's nothing ill that can dwell in such a temple. If the ill spirit have so fair a house, good things will strive to dwell in it." And this is similar to how she thought of Caliban. Because Caliban looks evil, he's got to be inside, he's got to be evil. And because she sees Ferdinand on the outside looking good, he must only be good on the inside. Because nothing good will want to stay in a house. Oh, sorry, the reverse. Nothing ill or bad will want to stay inside a house that is good. That's her naive or simplistic way of thinking. So here Prospero is planning. Okay, that's part of his plan, and he's showing power. You are a spy. And here we have Miranda showing love, but also the conspiracy. He's implying that Ferdinand is conspiring against Prospero, which we know isn't actually the case, but that's the false charges laying against him. Also, the idea of good and evil, because this idea of what is actually good, what is actually evil, and that connects to the theme of nature nurture in terms of with Caliban. It's the same kind of argument there. Prospero says, "Speak not you for him, he's a traitor. Come, I'll manacle thy neck and feet together." And he's talking to Ferdinand. "I'm going to chain you up." Ferdinand, he draws, takes his sword out, but he is charmed from moving. And Miranda tries to defend Ferdinand. He's gentle and he's not fearful. And Prospero says, "What?" I say, "My foot, my tutor. Why are you? I'm not going to be listening to you trying to educate me when you are beneath me. You're my daughter, just like my foot. I don't listen to my foot. I listen to my head, and I'm the head. You're the foot." So he puts her in her place. This emphasizes the planning and the test, also the love, because he's trying to protect Miranda seemingly out of love. He's a traitor. The control is emphasized by Prospero saying, "I'm going to enchain you," and also using the magic, Ferdinand cannot move. Pride is emphasized when he puts down his daughter, calls her just, "You're just my foot. You're like my foot." Also, Miranda has love there. He's gentle, and magic is emphasized at the end with the charm. Prospero says, "Your conscience is so possessed with guilt, that's why you can't move." So he doesn't reveal that he's doing magic on him. He's just saying, "You can't move. If you notice, you can't move. You know why? Because you're so guilty." And then he says, "By the way, I can disarm you with this stick." So he's implying that maybe there's a magic in the stick. Hang not on my garment. And this is a reference to Miranda, who's really holding on to Prospero, trying to stop him from doing this, and he chides her. "Sir, have pity. I'll be his surety. I'll defend him." Prospero says, "Silence. One word more shall make me chide thee, if not hate thee. Why are you going to be an advocate for an impostor?" So this has got the love theme here, and you have the power theme there. I can disarm you. Silence, lots of control there. Planning. Are you going to be an advocate? This is a test. It's focusing more on the test. So in a way, he's also testing Miranda, and he's testing Ferdinand. Pride, the fact that he's cursing Miranda for holding on to him. And hate, he actually says, "If not hate thee," which is a bit strong. But remember, this is an act. Prospero says, "Thou thinkst there is no more such shapes as he, having seen but him and Caliban. To the most of men, this is a Caliban, and they to him are angels." He's like Caliban. Most men, if you go back to Europe, he's like a Caliban, and most people, compared to him, are like angels. Miranda says, "I have no ambition to see a goodly man. I'm not interested in anyone else." And Ferdinand says, "My father's loss, the weakness which I feel, are light to me. If through my prison," because he knows he's going to be in prison, "once a day I behold this maid. If I can just see Miranda, then I'm happy." is what he says. Space enough have I in such a prison. He's happy if he has space enough like this. And so what happens is we have the love at first sight. The planning and the testing is happening in these quotes here. Also ignorance, because actually Miranda is quite ignorant, so and naive. So this could emphasize that. Also the love of both Miranda and Ferdinand is clearly emphasized there. And the idea of being slave actually. Now so we had already the willing slave and the unwilling slave. We have another unwilling slave here. But he's kind of in the middle because he's actually saying, I don't mind being enslaved so long as I can see, behold this maid. So the question of freedom, when he says space enough, I've got enough space, even in a prison. So there's lots of contrast being used, but Ferdinand is a different type of slave here. Miranda says, my father's of a better nature, sir, than he appears by speech. Prospero says aside, it works. And to Ariel, you shall be as free as mountain winds, but do exactly what I command. Ariel turns up and says, to the syllable. So you have the love theme right there. Prospero is talking about the love between Miranda and Ferdinand. You've got the appearance and reality. My father's of a better nature than he appears. Okay. Control. Do what I'm telling you to do, Ariel, then I will free you. And that emphasizes that obviously Ariel is the slave. And we have right at the very end of this scene, Ferdinand, he says, come, follow, and to Miranda, speak not for him, just emphasizing the control. That is basically the end of this whole act of trying to pick out all the key phrases, words, and give you a synopsis also at the same time, and connect it to the themes. Last thing, across Act 1, this includes Act 1, Scene 1, which I've not covered here, but you have challenges to authority. Okay, challenges of authority. So you have Ariel challenging Prospero for a second. You have Caliban challenging him throughout most of his part. Now, Ferdinand, there is an attempt when Ferdinand tries to take the sword out. So is that a challenge to authority? But then it could be Miranda challenging her father in defense of Ferdinand. So this is an ongoing theme. Okay. The other one is one about imprisonment. So you have Ariel having been enslaved by Sycorax, then being freed by Prospero, but then being enslaved by Prospero, and then he has to work to gain his freedom. Then you have Caliban, who was enslaved by Prospero, but loved and treated like an equal. But until Caliban tries to overstep the mark, and then he's enslaved more harshly. Then you have Ferdinand, who is being captured and then enslaved as part of a test. So these are the themes of imprisonment. And then you could even argue Prospero is imprisoned on the island. So he's even imprisoned. Okay. So those are the things that you could pick up there. And there are actually 5 tales told throughout this act. You have Prospero's loss of power and his demise. We get a whole snapshot of this. We have and connected to that is Antonio's usurpation, the alliance with him and the King Alonso of Naples. We have the whole story of Ariel's imprisonment, whether it's from Sycorax or Prospero. We also have Caliban's story, okay? And the 5th one is from the Ferdinand's perspective. Briefly, you could argue that's not really a tale, but you do get a snapshot from him coming onto the island with his sad knot. The link, knowing about Antonio's usurpation and his alliance, that works as a kind of Ferdinand's backstory about his father. Then we see Ferdinand being upset and sad about losing his father, and then how he's been part of Prospero's plot. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.